UWIL is proud to be the teletherapy educational partner of NASPA. More than 400 colleges around the globe trust UWIL to support student mental health and wellness needs. With UWIL, students can book an appointment in 5 minutes and receive crisis support in 30 seconds from licensed therapists 24/7, 365 days a year. Private, secure, confidential, and built to support students and you. UWIL provides an immediate appointment with a licensed counselor based on student preferences. All modalities of teletherapy, a direct crisis connection, wellness events, real-time data, and support. Learn more about bringing the leading mental health and wellness solution to your campus by visiting uwill.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience, and today I am super excited because I get a one-on-one. It's so rare that I get to be hosting a one-on-one conversation. As you all know, usually I'm a co-host, usually I'm production, I'm in the background, but today I get a one-on-one, and I'm excited. So I want to bring her in right away. She is Dr. Amelia Parnell, and she is the president of a little-known organization that you may have heard of called NASPA. Amelia, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Elvin. I wish I had some type of a really cool intro to match yours. You said, "Hi, I'm Elvin." I was like, maybe I should have changed the way I say my name.
Yeah, I've been saying that for years. I don't know why. I just kind of stuck with it. So I roll with it. So it's great. So thanks for being here. I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. You got a lot of stuff going on. So let's get right into it. So tell us about what you do and how you do it about NASPA. Tell us all about it.
Sure. So for those listening, you said little known. But for those who don't know it, there might be still. NASPA is a membership association. So I like to start off by saying there's an association for almost everything you can imagine. So even outside of higher education, there's an association for physicians and dentists and firefighters. Within higher education, there are many associations that probably could map to just about any aspect of the college functionality. So there's an association for college presidents. There's one for college registrars. There's one for those who work in financial aid. I have the privilege of leading NASPA, which is a student affairs membership association. So when I say members, that would be individuals who work mostly on college campuses, and they work in the area of student affairs or student life or student success. And those roles can range from vice president of student affairs all the way to a residence hall director or someone who's in charge of conduct. So we have a lot of things that we cover in terms of offerings. We have several conferences. Our biggest one is the one that most people know about. But we offer a lot of resources, publications, policy reports, and all types of things to help those individuals who work in student affairs keep abreast of current trends and issues and also learn from each other and with each other. So in the role of president, which I started in July of last year, so 9 months in, I get to meet a lot of professionals and visit a lot of campuses and talk with a lot of people. But I think what makes NASPA a really cool membership association is that as trends change and shift with students, we're following all that stuff. So there's never a dull moment, which is a good thing, but it's also a challenging thing because the portfolio can be really, really wide and deep sometimes.
Yeah, and I appreciate you laying out the context and letting us know that you've been there 9 months. And so, real quick, my NASPA story, and I told you this, is that, when I went there, I was in my early 20s, and I was in residence life, as a matter of fact. I was working residence life. You got to go to the NASPA conference, you got to go check it out. And it was like amazing. It was just like, it was so many people there, so many resources, so many opportunities. I got jobs because of NASPA. I got good contacts because of NASPA, and it was fantastic. And so, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, and you touched upon it a little bit, but what do you think makes, like I said, there's so many member organizations. What do you think makes NASPA different from all the other membership organizations? What do you think?
Well, I'd say the more we are different, we're also similar in some ways. And so the model of membership is that you would join, usually on an annual basis, and in return, you get access to a lot of things. So that's no different from most other associations, especially those within higher ed. I'd say also there's usually an emphasis on community. So when you said, hey, I went to NASPA, I did all these things, you could take the name NASPA and replace it with another higher ed membership association. Many others also focus on that too. I'd say third, a lot of membership associations they work as a nonprofit. So they do that without the goal of shareholders and things like that. So when you look at the structure and the operations and goals of associations, many of them are similar. NASPA, I'd say on paper, in those respects, we're doing the same things a lot of other associations are. Now, because I'm president of NASPA, I have to brag a little bit and just say what makes it feel special for me is that it's an organization that has over 100 years of history.
Oh, wow.
So it's founded and created in 1919. Not a lot of other associations have a century in the game. Doesn't make us better, but I can say it makes us unique. Similarly, I would say only a handful of organizations have evolved to a place where you can really almost think of anything that might touch the student experience, and there might be somebody in this membership who knows a little something about it. So it'll take some time to connect those dots, but I just got off a phone call with somebody who works in financial education, and I'm starting to learn more about how divisions of student affairs are providing financial education to students outside the classroom or maybe inside the classroom. So I say what makes us different is that we have a long, long history, and also that we can cover a lot of ground. So I have to also just say that I've made some really great friends. It's hard for me to answer that question in terms of what makes us different because I see so many similarities across associations. But what makes me most excited about NASPA is that, with a century of experience, a lot has changed and a lot has stayed the same. But I'd say student affairs is a function that regardless of what type of campus you're talking about, you have to have it. And so that makes it feel really special for me all the time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, we've had over 360 college presidents on, and it's always fun to have those presidents that come on and say, I started with student affairs. So it's a different environment, different world, a lot of student facing. That was my life too. I was in higher ed for 20 plus years, and I loved working with the students. It was in a residence life, like I said, all the way on up. So it was fantastic. So one of the things that I value about NASPA is that they have amazing programs and initiatives. So it might be hard for you to answer this question, but what do you think is like some of the most valuable programs and initiatives at NASPA?
Oh, see, now it's like asking me what's my favorite ice cream flavor because I like so many different flavors of ice cream. Let me give a nod to this and say for any of the staff at NASPA who are listening, there's 65 of the hardest working people in higher education. So I will not have enough time to name all the areas, so I'm not picking favorites. So I'll map this answer to what I see as current and emerging trends in the field. So right now, in terms of valuable programs and initiatives, I got to touch on the community aspect. So we had a really great conference in New Orleans about a month ago, and about 6,600 individuals came there. Just given you mentioned it earlier, coming to the conference, to have a community that big, it gives so much space for people to just reconnect and talk about what they've been experiencing, whether you're from a small college or big college, whether you've been in the field 5 years or 15 years, there's space for everybody to get to know each other and just be in community. So I would say we try to keep that going throughout the year. So in terms of something of value, we have a lot of knowledge communities, we have divisions, we have regions, a lot of places where someone who might be a part of NASPA, even if they can't be together in person, they can stay in touch. So that community, to me, is one of the most valuable parts of NASPA. In terms of specific content areas, I think you could talk to any college president or vice president of student affairs. And at some point when we ask them what's top of mind for you as an impact student, somewhere health and well-being will come up, whether it be mental health, whether it be physical safety, all types of things that relate to how students are maintaining a focus on well-being. So we have a really great strategies conference that happens every first quarter of the year. We have a lot of publications and ongoing resources to help professionals who are supporting students with their health and well-being. I think our research capacity is especially strong, and I'll own my bias in that. Before I worked at NASPA as president since July, I had 9 years at NASPA leading the research and policy area. I have a really great new colleague, Janae Chandler, who is leading that area. And I think this gives us greater capacity to not just see what's going on now, but maybe look ahead a little bit and talk about some issues that are kind of on the horizon. So I'm really, really excited about our capacity to do original research and scholarship. We have an emerging presence in trying to help professionals understand the policy landscape, policy environment, understanding how a bill becomes a law and a law becomes, regulation and all of that. And then, of course, this annual conference, I got to circle back around to that. So some people, their NASPA experience is that once a year they come to the conference. But in addition to that, we have a number of other conferences. So we do 20, 30 events, whether that be regional or national. So in terms of most valuable, anything to me that builds community, whether that be in person, whether that be virtually, even via email, something that gets people connected, I'm always going to say that we should prioritize that. In terms of student-focused issues, anything related to health, safety, well-being right now is at the top of the list for most presidents, vice presidents, and others. Obviously, the cost of college. Can you tell that I can go on for a long time about this? But I'd say anything, it kind of maps back to the general purpose of a membership association. You want to establish community and give people a chance to connect with each other throughout the year. I think we got to continue to give them good scholarship and research to let them know that we're on the cusp of what they need to know right now and in the years ahead. But in terms of specific topics, I can't overemphasize enough that discussion of health and wellness is the most timely.
Yeah. What's interesting is that you mentioned community, which I agree. It really is all about community. And you mentioned you had over 6,000,
Mm-hmm.
but you have how many people involved in NASPA? I mean, you touch almost all of higher ed, right?
Yeah. So,
In members.
so in membership models, you could look at it a couple different ways. So if you were to compare NASPA to other membership associations in higher education, some of them have what's called institution members. So big state university might buy a membership, and that means anybody at the campus can be a member. And then others say we do it at the individual level. So maybe Elvin, you buy membership, I buy membership, and we're both individually members of the association. NASPA has both in that we offer institutional memberships, and for campuses that get that, individuals within the campus can join at a reduced rate. So in terms of the number of campuses, we have over 2,000 represented at NASPA. And in terms of individuals, over 14,000 individuals. And so that covers almost every kind of campus you can think of. And that's what makes the community part so special.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. What's interesting is that so far we have yet to talk about AI. So of course you bring it up. Right? It's amazing that we're having a conversation this far into it. You have yet to talk about AI. So I have to ask, how is NASPA incorporating AI? Talk to us all about what's going on with AI.
Yeah, I think we're still early in it. Now, if I'm being honest, I'm sure somebody on the staff or someone who has certainly researched the question with AI. So I won't say we're not using it at all. But now, if I'm thinking in terms of larger strategy of how we're infusing AI for operations, we're not quite there yet. But what we have done is some early research and scholarship on how student affairs, the profession, might leverage AI. Had a really great opportunity to do a project with Dr. Claire Brady, a consultant, who is a former vice president for student affairs. And she, in partnership with NASPA, just released a really great report that talks about the intersection of student affairs and AI. So I think we now have fertile ground to build on those findings, and we might actually do a little bit more. If I had to say what I think, and it's funny you asked me this, because I just had an interview on AI a couple weeks back, and I can tell you what I would love to see as the future of NASPA incorporating AI. And so this is me maybe going on my wish list. I'd like to see it be something where we still have an opportunity to share with the membership effective practices. So building on that report, what should VPs of student affairs, AVPs, and others who are working in student affairs be thinking about how they leverage AI to move from just the transactional to something more relational. So literally the idea that if you and I were meeting, and let's say I need to talk through my course sequencing to make sure that I'm on pace to graduate on time, that work would be done through AI before I even meet with you. And that would give us more time to talk about why I actually want to be a physician as opposed to am I taking the right classes. So I think there are plenty of examples of how we can move from a more transactional space in student affairs to one that's more relational. And I'd like for NASPA to be the curator of some of those examples. And we just got to do some more work to make sure we got enough examples to show. I think on the operations side, this is where I'm going to take off the other hat and put on just the president hat and say, I think the future of AI, not just for NASPA, but for any nonprofit really, or maybe even for-profit company, is to take a fresh look at everything that you offer. And normally we talk about this in higher ed. We have a great capacity to start things, but we're not always the best at revising and maybe pausing some things and reimagining what we're doing. So we have a huge portfolio of everything that we offer. I would love to leverage AI to see exactly which of those things we're still doing, we should keep doing, which things we should modify a little bit, and which things we should maybe put on the shelf for a little while. So that's more of an operational business analytics type use case, but I think that translates well to many other organizations, especially associations right now. So short answer is we're in the early stages of incorporating AI, but I think give us another year or so. I think we have a lot more to share.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think that's the answer that a lot of folks are giving now is that they're trying to figure out what are we going to do with this AI? And ultimately, how is it going to help us save time, work with students more? I think that's super important. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's definitely something you want to look for and more research in the future. And speaking of the future, tell me about some other future initiatives that maybe you are planning already, or like you said, you want to put that hat on and say, I would love for this to happen in the future with NASPA.
Yeah, I could think of can you tell I think about this a lot in terms of the future of NASPA. Everything looks different when you're in a presidency because you get to see the full landscape. So I'm very appreciative of my prior role because I got to see a lot of the organization. But I'm going to answer the question, but now I got to give you this cheesy analogy. It's like being in the car. So I think you interviewed my predecessor, Kevin Kruger, on the show. And for many years when he was president, I was in the car. I was in the NASPA car as a VP. And, I know how to roll the windows down, to change the radio station and turn on the air conditioner and all that. And times when he would be away, one of us as VPs keys would, keep things moving. But it's different when you sit in the driver's seat of that car, because the vantage point is different. Somebody saying, "Hey, where are we going and how are we getting there?" Like, "Oh wait, that's me. I got to determine the route." Oh, by the way, everybody in this car expects to get there safely. You know what I mean? So you got to check your blind spots and things like that. So I spend more time now thinking about the future than I ever did in terms of the future of the student affairs profession, the practice of student affairs, the associations. Not just me, but our neighbor associations. So two things are bubbling up, I'd say, for me more now than ever. It is literally the future of student affairs. So what does the profession and the practice need to look like going ahead? There are a lot of environmental factors that are showing us that this is the time for change in student affairs. And I'll name a couple of them. Sometimes when I talk to people about how they got into the profession, many of them will say they came through a graduate preparation program, or they worked as a graduate assistantship, something like that for a while. Others, however, have said, I got a background in public health, or I have a background in public safety, or I have a health and well-being portfolio, and I didn't want to go into the medical field, but I see some translation of my skills and abilities. So I think the future of doing student affairs work is going to involve many more individuals coming from not just your more popular pathways, but a different one. So I think the twofold part of my answer is, one, I want to see what the future of student affairs landscape analysis will reveal now. So we did it during the pandemic of all times. This is 2020, 2021, where we asked a lot of professionals, thousands of them, what they feel like the future is going to be. And here we are 3.5 years later. And some of those things are happening, but I feel like so much has changed since then. I want to do the study again. I want to see what people are thinking top of mind. What's the future of the profession, the practice? The other is, I think, in terms of operationalizing that for NASPA, because we have so many members, we have 14,000 of them, I'd like to be more intentional about helping them navigate the NASPA experience and put them in a bit more of a curated pathway to how they can experience the fullness. So for someone who, for example, doesn't go to the annual conference one year, I wouldn't want them to feel like, oh, I don't have to worry about joining NASPA. I want them to still join, because there's a long list of other ways they could be engaged. So similar to how we would suggest that students should get on a path and stay on the path and have something curated for them about how to experience the college campus, I want that same thing for individuals who join NASPA. So it's not just to market to them a bunch of things. It literally might be every quarter or so, there's a group of individuals who have the same portfolio as you. They get together. Did you know about that? Let me tell you when those things are. Yeah, we have a conference, but if you can't make it to the conference, here are a couple publications on the same topic. So something that really makes it a little bit more of an intentional directive for how they can navigate the NASPA experience. So that's on the operational side, but on the kind of general field side, the future for me looks like, I just want to know what I feel like people are thinking is around the corner for student affairs. And it might be both how people get into the work, but the topics that we explore. You mentioned AI would certainly be in that. I'll give you a quick stat. So when we did that study about the future of student affairs 3.5 years ago, there was a question that said, to what extent are you and colleagues prioritizing the use of AI or augmented reality? 33% said not at all. Not prioritizing, not talking about it. I know if we asked that same question right now, that would be way, way different. So the nerd in me, the researcher in me, is excited to get to some future conversations about the profession and what people are doing in it. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for laying that out. And it's interesting because I've heard you say curation, curate, and I've heard you say pathway. And so it just leads me to ask this question. Yeah. What was your path to get you to where you are? Tell us your story. I gotta know. I gotta know.
More than 400 colleges around the globe trust UWorld to support the mental health and wellness of their students, faculty, and staff. As the leading global mental health and wellness solution, UWorld provides an immediate appointment with a licensed counselor based on student preferences. All modalities of teletherapy, a direct crisis connection, wellness events, real-time data, and support. UWorld is proud to be the teletherapy educational partner of NASPA. Learn how UWorld can support your students by visiting uworld.com.
Oh, and I get this question a lot, and I would love to tell you that it was me 20 years ago saying, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I want to lead a national membership association in student affairs. Yeah. That was not, people say, was that on your bingo card? That was not on my bingo card.
That's a good one.
But what I can say is a lot of what I've done before now is all starting to come together. So almost like I give this advice to anybody who would ask me, I know it sounds cheesy, but literally just kind of trust the process, trust where you are. And if you kind of let your consistent decision-making making be aligned with what you most value and what was important to you, you'll probably land in some place eventually. Now, have there been a couple places in my portfolio that I would say I didn't really enjoy as much? Of course, we all have those. But the way I got there, I'll try to be succinct, is when I started college, I had only one single intention. I was going to corporate America. I had joined my sister in going to Florida A&M University as an undergrad. They had a 5-year MBA program. My plan was to finish that program and to go to a corporate environment and work my way up. And I don't think I had a title in mind, but I pictured myself being in that corporate environment. I did some internships, got close to the action, realized it was not for me, didn't like it, talked to an advisor who said, you cannot change your major from business because it would take you too long. I had an academic scholarship that I didn't want to run out of money for, and I said, I'm going to stay with the MBA. So I finished it. And then after that experience, I ended up working for a couple of years. And one of those jobs was as an internal auditor at that same alma mater. And that was my first introduction to the other side of how colleges work. I'd only seen it from the student side, like most people. But when I got a chance to do more interviews and be on some projects that helped me see literally how the money flowed, how decisions were made, I left with so many questions. And I had a colleague who was like, you should consider studying higher ed administration. And again, this is early 2000s. I was like, what? He said, there's a major of study. I said, what are you talking about? He said, people study higher ed administration. I said, why are you telling me this? He said, you're annoying me. Every day you come over here, you ask me all these questions about what's going on here. Why are we doing this and that? He said, have you ever considered maybe studying this? And that unlocked it for me. Like I literally, at that point, I said, okay, let me look into some programs, and I found a great program at Florida State. I did an interview with the program coordinator. I said, I'll give it a semester. And if I like it, maybe I'll stick with it. And from the first semester on, everything started to gel for me. I started to see the business side of higher education. I know we don't talk about that a lot, but these are multi-million-dollar enterprises. They're making the same decisions around legal implications of marketing, communications, all that stuff. And I started to see connections that I didn't know were there. And I was like, let me keep going with this. And the more I got into it, at the same time, I also ended up working for 7 years as a policy analyst in the Florida legislature. So my policy background, I'd say Florida was a fertile ground experience for me to learn how politics works. Yeah. From there, I ended up working at another association. So before NASPA, I worked at the Association for Institutional Research. So when I oftentimes talk, and I gave you that stat, I'm just naturally but someone who leans into what information do we have? What data do we have on this? And I think that experience gave me both the introduction to association work, but then also to a really unique aspect of higher ed, which is the use of information and data to make decisions. I think that's going to be evergreen. So from there, I got an opportunity to work at NASPA as the Vice President for Research and Policy. And that was 9 years of a really great experience with some great colleagues. And honestly, when Kevin announced his retirement and I decided to enter the search, it was because I didn't want it to end. There was more that I wanted to do, and there's more questions to answer, more things to explore. So the through line for me, all of those steps along the way that led up to here, I was both interested and inspired. So even when I was doing the work as an internal auditor, I was like, I had those questions not to be annoying, but I was like, oh, but things could be so much better if we did this, we did that. And it was this natural curiosity. So when you hear me say curate, it was like, no, I always have this inquisitive nature to understand things. So I'm always interested, but it can't just be a question for no reason. I usually try to connect it to, why do I care about this? What would be better if I could answer this question, or if I could help somebody in this type of way? So I think whether it be the policy landscape, getting into the weedy weeds of policy analysis, I always saw the background of that as being some type of legislation that ultimately would impact somebody. So if I could do great research and analysis, that might help those making decisions better understand it and make better decisions on behalf of constituents. So as long as I have something on my path that I'm doing that I'm both interested in and I'm inspired by the outcome, I'm in a good space. Now, do I feel like NASPA, did NASPA have that type of impression on me in my early 2000s? I didn't even know about NASPA. I didn't know about student affairs, any of that. So I won't give NASPA too much credit for this part of the journey, but I can say now that I'm here, it does connect for me, the business background that I had. There's all kinds of things I need to know about higher ed, the landscape, the political environment, all kinds of things that I care about in terms of using research and scholarship. And ultimately, it's just a great place to work. It sounds like a commercial. It's going to be like NASPA.org, but like it really has. It's been a connection of all the things I've had before now. And it's just been nice. It's been really nice.
It's funny. Oh, I can relate so much, Amelia. I had the same situation where I went to Northeastern University and they have the 5-year co-op program. And so I wanted to do television and radio. I was all over television and radio. And then because of that first co-op experience, aka internship, right? I couldn't find a paid internship, a paid co-op, because it was all free. I'm Puerto Rican, first generation. I grew up with my grandma. No way I can afford it. So I had to work on campus. My first job was at a student affairs office.
Awesome.
Life. I was literally at the desk learning about, services and residence life and how to be customer service friendly. And it was Excel, and it was crazy. And then every time I looked for a job, I couldn't find anything in the communications, television, and radio, because it was unpaid. So I stayed on campus. I became orientation lead. I worked all student, and then the same thing happened. Somebody said, "You know what? You're pretty good at this. Have you heard of higher education?" What is that? I don't even know what that is. You could get okay. So funny. I'm sure there's a bunch of us who have the same situation. It's great. All right, it's such a fun conversation. I got a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
Is there anything that we didn't cover during our conversation about NASPA that you want to talk about?
Maybe two things. I'd say, for as much as NASPA is an organization that's been around for a long time and has a really integral part of the higher ed landscape, I have to just say, and maybe I'm just being in a moment of gratitude for longer than I would have expected. NASPA is a part of an even larger community of other associations. So I know NASPA gets a lot of the spotlight because we're one of the biggest, but there are a number of other neighbor associations that do student affairs work. So we have ACPA, we have NERSA, we have NODA, we have ACUOI. I hesitate to name all of them. NACE. There are a number of other student affairs associations, and we often work in partnership. We have a lot of conversations. So my earlier answer about the kind of the future of student affairs, those conversations are happening across the board. So when I think student affairs, I think of the whole community. So what I'd like to say is that I'm overemphasizing gratitude for the partnerships across student affairs, because we're at a time now where to do student affairs work is just really hard. I think there's certainly great reward and a great feeling when we can make that type of impact. But to do that, this is some of the longest hours that people work in all of higher education. And for the type of strain and stress, I have to acknowledge that there's more than NASPA in the landscape. So I didn't cover that part. And the other is that when you meet a student affairs professional, similar to how people could see this, they would see us smiling on Zoom. When you talk to people about student affairs and they get into it, their faces sometimes light up and they smile and they have a story about either how they got into student affairs or a student group they worked with or some experience that's just memorable. Oftentimes you see NASPA as the organization, the platform, the website, but behind that 14,000, not just those who joined NASPA, but the thousands more who have not yet joined but are working in the field, I can honestly say some of the most thoughtful individuals, like just intentional with how they approach the work. And I feel optimistic about higher ed because of student affairs. I do. And I myself, am a recipient of that type of care in college. And as long as I'm working at NASPA and someone asks me about it, I'm probably going to leave it to people. Even that question when you said, what's the most valuable part? And I said, the community. There's something about NASPA, got something going on that makes people feel like they are a part of something. Though the work is really hard and challenging, but it leaves you with an impression that there's somebody else out there that you can relate to, that you can partner with, work with, learn from. And I didn't cover that to a great degree, but I got to leave with that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's interesting that, student affairs folks have always been student-facing, student-centric, and how that's like the number one thing now that's been going around for a while. Now, we're student-focused. Student affairs, we've been doing that for forever. It's always been student-focused. What are you talking about? So I find that to be really funny. Okay, so my last question. We talked about like the future of, student affairs. Let's talk about the future of higher education, which I can't wait for you to get into your crystal ball.
Okay.
And let me know, what do you see as the future of higher education?
Well, I got a couple thoughts. Maybe I'll go micro to macro. So when I say micro, I'll think about what the future of higher education might be for the individual. So the person who's trying to go to college or have that experience. I think whether it be AI, whether it be enrollment trends, downturns here, upsides there, I think we're going to be pressed to make the college experience more personalized. I mean, I think gone are the days of the single initiative. Those were long gone anyway. That would be applied to a whole group of students. I think we will leverage all kinds of technologies so that individual will have more of a personalized experience from day one to when they complete. And that means some of it, we have to do it with fidelity, so it doesn't feel like we're being overbearing with our just-in-time support. But I think we won't have nearly as many individuals who say, I didn't feel like the campus knew what I was doing and how to support me. We might be some years out in terms of that being in perfect flow, but I think the individual will say their college experience felt more personalized, or it should feel more personalized. I think one layer up, we'll start to see a lot of tough questions across certain sectors of college. And I think maybe small colleges and those who are in the regions where enrollment trends are not necessarily where we want them to be. I won't predict anything that suggests their downfall, but I think we're going to have new conversations about resource sharing, consortia type of arrangements, ways that campuses that are in close proximity could partner together and work together. I think that's going to be part of it. I think at the next level up, if we're talking about whole states and regions of the country, I think we'll probably see more regulation. Unfortunately, a lot of people in our business, there are people who are looking from the outside, not just to be observers, but because they want to influence. And by that, not necessarily all bad, but there are a lot of questions about, and I don't mean that just in the political sense, industry. There's still a narrative about higher education that is too expensive, and sometimes those who go can't find jobs and things like that. So I think we will see more partnerships at a macro level where there might be external partners that felt previously external that are now more lateral or internal, partnering to offer different formats of college experiences and credit. So the idea that someone might have a long tenure at a particular type of company, but what happens if that company wants to partner with a neighboring university in a more intentional way to have a joint arrangement where individuals can get those degrees? That's not new, but I think we'll see more of that. And I think at the highest level, I think we'll see some new models of how to cover the cost of college. Now that's my biggest dream, because college is not just expensive to the individual; it's an expensive enterprise to manage. And so I don't want to. I'm not saying the word efficiency. I'm not saying that at all. But I do think we will see some new models of how to deliver a holistic, a personalized experience, one that is connecting campuses a little bit more intentionally, one that has strong partnerships. That's probably my 10, 15 years out view. So when I say micro to macro, that personalized thing, that's right now. I think we'll see more campuses do that right now. That region-based partnerships across campuses that maybe are struggling with enrollments or just having some unique challenges, I think that's probably 2 to 3 years out. That next level up where we start to see across the United States and other regions of the country partnering with industry and workforce, I think that's probably next 5 years before we start to see major change there. And then ultimately, higher ed may look completely different in the next 15 years in terms of just the operations model. I mean, again, there's all kinds of factors, technology and all that stuff that might push higher ed to be a different type of industry. But as long as I'm working in this field, I think bringing it all the way back down to the individual, I believe this a long time ago that college is worth it. Whatever it looks like, whatever it's delivered like, I still feel like it's worth the investment. And I'm more excited than I am concerned that higher ed is going to be under this change and it's going to be difficult. I'm more excited about what that difficult period will lead to than I am concerned. I have concerns, real concerns, but I'm optimistic about where it's going to leave us.
Yeah. Wow. That was awesome. and I just want to say that it's interesting, doing this podcast and having so many people on, at all levels, that conversation of return on investment, ROI, value of higher ed, that was happening for a little bit, but now that's dying down. I think people are understanding there obviously is a return on investment and the value of higher ed is going to be around. It's not going anywhere. Like you said, it's going to change, it's going to evolve and how you want it to, right? To adjust and be more personalized in partnerships and relationships. But the value is obviously there. So there's no question anymore. I think that conversation is gone. We don't even ask that question anymore. It's pretty said and done. So Amelia, this has been fantastic. I'm so excited that we got a chance to talk and to meet, and you have amazing insights for our community and listeners. So I thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, she is Dr. Amelia Parnell, and she's the president of NASPA. Amelia, thank you so very much.
Thank you very much for having me, and congratulations on a successful podcast.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
You will. The leading mental health and wellness solution, proudly supporting 3 million students at more than 400 colleges worldwide with immediate access to licensed therapists 24/7, 365 days a year. For more information, visit youwill.com. That's the letter U, WILL.com.